Hey everyone, what's going on? This is Derrick, and I'm here with who do we got?
Trying to arrange ourselves. I'm Johnny.
Micah.
Micah's in the house.
What's up? Free Thinker Radio.
Another episode of Free Thinker
Micah
Radio.
in the house yet?
Micah's going to be here in just a moment. We're getting him plugged in. We're live now, of course. If you're listening on 90.1 KPFT Houston, you are
Echo. And
mute yourself. Mute your
I'm
volume.
muted.
Cool. Nope.
Still echoing.
Now it's coming from over here. Hold on, guys. Whoop. How about now? Good now? All right,
Seems
hopefully it's
better.
better now.
Check.
Make sure everybody can hear us. Before we continue, that was a little echoey and loud and confusing. We got Micah over here. Of course, this is Derrick, Johnny. I'll wait for somebody to say everything sounds good before we continue.
Everything sounds good. Oh, I'm in the ring.
Here comes Micah.
What's up? All right. I think we're not echoing. Are we not echoing?
I don't think we're echoing. Nobody's saying, hey, we're echoing anymore, so I think we're probably good. We need somebody to double check that, though, before we continue. But I think we're probably good. So this is another episode of Free Thinker Radio here on 90.1 KPFT Houston, and we are broadcasting for the second week in a row together in the same room for the first time in a couple months.
At all.
Yeah, we're probably not social distancing at the moment very much. We're at the same table. And we are here this week to, Mike is literally right there next to us. We're here to talk about this, news that you guys are not going to hear elsewhere on other stations, on other channels. And that is Free Thinker Radio. We've been doing this for several years now. And we are continuing to bring you information that not only will you not find on Houston radio, but you're not going to find in some places in Houston in general because of, I think mainly what sets us apart is our desire to give the audience, you guys, the freedom to, whenever we're in studio, call in or even online to chime in and share what you think, not just to have one side of the argument or one side of the discussion. I mean, that's why we call it Free Thinker Radio, and we talk about controversial topics and ideas, but the whole idea is to get everybody talking and thinking, and KPFT gives us the freedom to do that. So we do it online, and we do it on 90.1 KPFT every week, Friday at 3 p.m. for those who don't know.
For sure. Glad to do this, have this live stream. Really love the software that we're using. We can have all these comments coming in from various platforms. Thank you, everybody that does comment, share articles, and thumbs up, share this video. We're going to play music. We're always loving to play music. We probably get into 3 different songs this episode as usual. And again, thank you, KPFT, for the opportunity to discuss these ideas and to share the music we love. So, yeah.
Sweet. So you want to jump into a song and come back, or would?
No, let's get into some news.
I mean,
why not just get going? I know there's a lot. You've been doing a lot, and I saw Johnny had gone out to the police union and all kinds of things going on, and people saying all kinds of craziness on Facebook.
Cops are on the mind. We got this story coming up about HPD budget discussions. But Johnny, tell everybody first about the protest you did this weekend.
So on Saturday, we all went out to the police union. And for those of you who don't know, police unions are essentially like any other work union. So these are the guys that kind of would defend an officer if his job was in question. And a lot of people have argued that they can be the source of, some cops getting away with, certain misconduct or, not being charged at all. So we decided to go protest out there, let them know that we thought that, sorry, I'm trying to adjust my seat right now. But we just wanted to let them know that we expect them to stand against police violence, and we expect, there to be more transparency and more accountability in the Houston Police Department. And we actually successfully got an officer out. I don't know if we're ever did you release that interview, Derrick?
Yeah, I actually did. It was the, what is his name? Douglas Griffiths or something like that. Yeah. He was one of the VPs, I guess there's more than one, of the Houston Police Officers Union. And we talked to him I was there for about 20 minutes of the video that I put out, but I know there's people there for probably half an hour or more. And yeah, we were just trying to.
What was your takeaway of that?
Honestly, I appreciated just as a human being that he was willing to speak, right? But obviously, I was very skeptical of the whole thing. You know, I don't know if we told you this, Micah. This guy walks out with a Coke, a Coca-Cola, and like a pizza in his hands, and coming out like he's bringing an olive branch or something. And while the officers that have been out in, like previously just staring at us through the window are filming and watching it, it just felt like it was a propaganda moment for them or something. I'm sure that's on their Twitter or their Instagram or whatever somewhere. Like, here's the chief, you know, or one of the VPs handing out pizza to protesters or something like that. And yeah, he talked to us, and this is actually posted on the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel right now for everybody who wants to watch it. But he basically talked to us, but kept, in my opinion, kept deflecting like the topics and discussion. And in the case of the Tuttles, we know that the Officer Goines did lie, and that after that whole thing happened, the mayor stood by with other city council members and the president of the Police Officers Union, where Johnny was having this event, Joe Grimaldi, that they called them thugs and drug dealers, and really, as you know, Micah, that they basically just painted them in this picture. And I just think there's a lot of hypocrisy going on right now.
Did you see that Gerald Goines had interactions with George Floyd?
No, I haven't seen that.
I did not know that.
Posted up on the Free Thinker Radio page a couple days back is a letter from Kim Ogg's office to George Floyd, and it's filed. You can look at it online.
Wow.
Yeah, apparently that a case with him was one of those 1,400 or so cases that was being reviewed.
Wow, that's crazy. And that officer, he did admit that like Goines was a bad cop, but at the same time, he wasn't willing to, make any kind of statements exonerating the family from the negative press that they got. I really had a huge problem with that.
Oh yeah, he was still trying to be. They weren't good people.
He said they weren't necessarily good people, but regardless of your opinion of like maybe their personal life, you still can't bust into somebody's house and say there was drugs in the house. He was claiming like, oh no.
He was still lying on that.
Yeah, he said that they didn't confirm whether or not there was heroin in the house. So, but they didn't find any heroin. So I'm pretty sure they would have reported that. And also, he claimed that the independent investigation was done, maybe
the forensic investigation.
The one that was paid for by the families, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the one paid for by the families of the Tuttles. He claimed that it wasn't accurate, that shots were fired from outside the home. So I don't know where that dispute ends
the
up
thing is,
how we would take that to court.
He goes, oh, well, the guy they hired isn't, he's not that much of a professional. And I've read up on the guy. He's a 30-year experienced professional who's been in all these different cases, who does have, clear experience in this field of forensic investigation. The one that showed that the bullet, and I've been to the house, you can see the bullet holes where it clearly came from outside the house, which, is not part of HPD's official story, they said. So it's not just about Gerald Goines. It's that other people carried on this lie that they tried to sell, He
claimed internal police investigators were somehow like a third party, and they missed things, I believe.
Yeah. Either way, this guy just seemed I appreciate that he came out and spoke to us, but he kept deflecting. And, whenever I confronted him and said, actually, this guy has 30 years worth of experience, he just kind of changed the subject. He was, so he was just throwing things out there. And anybody who didn't know better would just, okay, well, maybe he's right about that.
So he didn't really step outside the narrative or speak about any responsibility of the police officers union besides defending their police officers.
I'd say the most that he did in regards to that would say, like, I work really hard for this badge, so I want to hold anyone accountable who doesn't respect that. So, maybe that's true, maybe it's not true, but that's what he was telling us.
But police are a hot topic this week everywhere, though. I mean, Micah, you had the story from the Chronicle about the budgets, and I know that today there was some news from the mayor. Today was actually George Floyd's funeral, his burial today, while we're recording this on Tuesday. If you're listening on KPFT, you're hearing this on a Friday. But City Council was discussing a number of different things related to police reforms. And today at George Floyd's funeral, or his viewing, the viewing was yesterday, the funeral was today, the mayor said that he's going to issue an executive order to ban chokeholds and to require warning shots before officers fire on people. So first, before we get into this, what do you guys think about that? Like, as far as, the reforms they're putting forward? Because in addition to that, the mayor, besides marching with the marchers, he told CNN a couple days ago he does not support any efforts to take money away from the cops. and to defund them in any way, not even like the half, quarter, or whatever. He's like, we need more money for the cops is what he's saying. So more money for the cops, no chokeholds, warning shots.
Yeah, not to harp on it, but the officer we spoke to yesterday said that the HPD has never done chokeholds. So that could just be complete one of them would be lying at that point, that either the mayor's saying he's doing something or they've been using chokeholds and he lied to us.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Micah? Do you think that's a real reform? And we've seen this since 2014 when body cameras were first getting pushed. Then last week, myself and other people are getting arrested. The cops aren't wearing body cameras. People get killed and we don't get the footage, or it was turned off. I mean, is this going to be another one of these kind of steps where they just make more promises? And
well, it's difficult. It's difficult to understand because it doesn't sound like any real reform, right? Because most of the ones, we've covered a lot of police violence over the last decade on this radio show. And I know we've covered more than just shootings, but a lot of them have been shootings, like the cops just flat out shooting people. So this aspect of they'll have to warn before they shoot. Well, if they're required to wear body cameras, that might be something that can be documented. I'm not always for reform because I feel like what you're doing there is you're also just shoring up the existing difficult agency. I don't always know that the reform goes through to the root of the problem rather than just, parasitically attaching itself. Are we going to talk about maybe every single one of these laws is a chance for an interaction between the person and a police officer, and that anytime there's a chance for an interaction, it could go up to a knee on the neck or a shooting. So do we want to talk about truly minimizing any of this? It sounds like the mayor doesn't want to, and he does sound like he wants to have more money for the police. And, here in Houston, we have a long history of police violence in this city. And Art Acevedo and the mayor, we saw what they were saying and the stance they took on the Tuttles. And maybe that's not the only one we have to talk about. But it is really interesting that now that it's trending, they seem so politician to run out there and get in front and act like they're doing something that seems like just, I don't know, maybe putting some Band-Aids on something. I don't know. I just don't think it sounds like real change.
Yeah, and and I don't want anybody hearing this to think we're trying to discount the movement or that's going on, or people who are calling out police brutality or calling out racism or anything of that sort. I think that it is just odd to see the response that, like you said, politicians are being politicians. They're going to say whatever. The hypocrisy of George Bush and Obama stepping out and saying, all of a sudden they care about these various lives, and they may very well be upset about this case. I don't know that for certain. But they also have actions which completely contradict this sentiment that they're, so concerned about the well-being of the American people, particularly the black and brown people, when both were involved with drone bombing and torture of black and brown people in Africa and in the Middle East, and just all that whole history. So it's just that there's so much hypocrisy going on. I don't really trust these people. Again, in the city of Houston, for those who are concerned with this issue and want to know more about it, the mayor has made it clear he does not support taking away any funds from the police. And this, I don't know if you've seen this, Micah, but this has been really intriguing to me that my friends who are maybe on the more to the right of me are totally freaked out by the defund the police movement. It's weird. It's like some of the people who've been well aware of the police state, talked about the militarization of the police state and the violence of the police state, are now kind of having like a freak out response of, oh no, the left is calling for defunding the police. They just want chaos and violence in the street. And I think it's
always chaos now, isn't it?
Well, it's more, to me, it's more left-right paradigm too stuff. Yeah. But everything's like, it's going to be anarchy in the street. And I think instead of there being a sensible conversation about what does that actually mean to demilitarize the police or to defund the police.
That's my idea for the reform. If we were going to defund the police, we should specify what we're going to defund. So they couldn't just take away funds for, necessities to continue paying for, whatever crowd control weapons like the tear gas, and specifically defund, certain unnecessary riot gear.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't, I would say, as somebody who personally does work towards a world where things like the police as we know them now do not have to exist, and the entity that they have the history of being, and that's maybe more of a radical position. But I do think that you get there probably in steps, even though I don't personally fight for reform to reform the system. But if you start getting people willing to talk about, hey, let's take away all these toys, because we've talked about for years through the federal 1033 program how they get military toys sent to local departments who have like maybe a population of a few thousand people. And before, it used to be old equipment that they were getting, but now there's been research showing that they're literally just manufacturing new equipment that is getting directly sent to local departments in the U.S. now. And so we have these heavily militarized police force that have been growing since 9/11. And I think whether you consider yourself left, right, or whatever, that's something that people need to recognize. And part of that militarization is them getting away with, as we've covered here extensively, rape, murder, lying, cheating, stealing.
And let's not forget the surveillance aspect.
Yeah, the surveillance control aspect
because there's still cameras all over downtown and different things like that HPD uses.
So I got the budget here pulled up, Micah, the one from the Chronicle. You want to get into this? It says spending cuts, police reforms.
There's one paragraph I skipped down. I know we've spent some time on it, but I think this is kind of interesting. The mayor has expressed opposition, meanwhile, to a sweeping police reform amendment introduced by Councilwoman Letitia Plummer that would eliminate nearly 200 vacant positions in the Houston Police Department. Sounds like, trying to make it manageable, right? The funds saved by getting rid of the positions and a cadet class would go towards beefing up de-escalation training and the Police Oversight Board, among other proposals sought by those pushing for police department reform around the country. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about that one is, you see, they're talking about this money would go to, instead of to whatever it's going to, they're saying it would go to a police oversight board and de-escalation training, right? Which is, who are they going to do this training with? The police, right? I'm not so sure. I mean, who's going to, these are choices that have to be made. Who's doing the training? What does this mean? And is this new, more conscious police force going to be any different than the old police force? And like, they're not going to cut back. It sounds like these ideas of defund the police are minimal at best, right? It doesn't sound like they're truly defunding them. As Johnny was saying, what's being cut? Where's it being cut? It sounds like they're just reallocating. And Turner repeatedly said during last year's mayoral campaign that he wants to grow up the police department by several hundred officers, and he police department's budget when he appeared on CNN this week. Over $900 million. Think about that.
Crazy.
That's almost $1 billion and voted into personnel.
A city police department.
Yep. 5,000 men.
And they're always crying about that they don't have enough.
Some countries.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember during the mayoral campaign, this was an issue, me saying like we have too much police, and the mayor and these other people, again, none of the other politicians, city council, et cetera, typically will go in this direction. That's why I was surprised to see that, Micah, from Letitia Plummer.
And it turns out the police union also negotiated a 3% pay bump from July 1st through the end of the year. So, meanwhile, a lot of people who are non-essential employees and all of that having a hard time out there. We're going to talk about the economic numbers later in this show. But they're getting pay raises, and we see this happen as chaos goes into countries. Look at Zimbabwe. Look at Liberia. The police and the military get raises while they're going to talk about defunding the police. I've got other information about defunding the police outside of Houston. I think this is a national conversation that we need to unravel, and we'd like everybody's knee-jerk response to it to kind of take it down a little. What does this mean? Defund the police. Here's your chance, all of you people who've been anti-government for so long. Platform in on this. Where do you think the police should be defunded? Okay, and if they are defunded, does that mean they're going to stop trying to take people's guns, for example? Because now you might have to defend yourself. I mean, or are they going to defund the police while still wanting more draconian laws each year? Well,
before you go to the national, Micah, I just want to read. So these are the 4 amendments you're just mentioning from Councilmember Letitia Plummer. So she posted this on June 3rd, and one part she calls the Comprehensive Policing Program, reallocate funds to Independent Police Oversight Board, which I've heard. So there already is one in Houston, so they're just calling for more money for them. And this is one of the things the guy that we talked to, the VP of the police union, was saying to us, is that they already have that. He claimed that the oversight board, the independent oversight board, that they don't want subpoena power, because that's what we're calling for. And he's like, oh, they don't want it, which doesn't really make much sense to me. Why they wouldn't want subpoena power to order officers to have to testify or to come present information. But this is interesting, creating a portal, online portal for police misconduct reporting. Whether that would lead to anything is, we'd have to wait to see, but that's what they're calling for. Then de-escalation training, like you said, implicit bias training, fund community reentry network program, fund my brother's keeper program, which I believe is like a felon program, fund excessive force policy training, campaign 0, implement the following: exhaust other means before shooting, ban on chokeholds and strangleholds, de-escalation, warning before shooting. So again, the mayor today announced a ban on chokehold and warning before shooting, and report to independent oversight board when shooting occurs, subpoena power for the independent oversight board. And so that's kind of, and that doesn't really sound that crazy, you know, to people who are hearing defund the police. Like, honestly, I like as little government as possible, but if there's going to be a local government that can help reduce the money, you said what, 900, what was it? 900 million, almost $1 billion. Like, that's insane. I don't see how anybody sensible can think that giving $1 billion to a police department is a good idea when Houston is not the kind of city where there's crime like all over.
I got friends that are getting evicted still, you know?
It's just crazy. Like again, we're not, Houston is not the type of city that is overwhelmed like, say, a Chicago or something like that with crime. Crime does happen, of course, in a big city with nearly 4 million people, 5 million plus in the greater Houston area. But it's not overwhelming. So I do think that we can start talking about and should consider alternatives to traditional policing whenever we see police violence taking place. And the people who want to serve in that way can still have a role and have a way. I mean, we can get more into the solutions of that maybe later. We talk about Detroit threat management and some other places.
I don't think stopping thieves is going to end just if the police are defunded. Maybe, you know, like we've spoken a number of times, some of these laws, every law is a chance for an interaction. And maybe some of these laws don't need to get to that level. And we've seen some laws change even here in Harris County with some decriminalization of such things as marijuana and such. And I think maybe we need to look at both, where the money's going and what creates interaction between the police and society. And is that the type of interaction that we want to pay for?
Absolutely. Do you want to go into this? What does it really mean to defund the police? Is that where you're headed?
Yeah, but we don't have to go into it right now if we got some more local. I just think that we're getting there, you know, that this is.
Go to that. How about you that? Everybody listening?
I do.
You're listening to Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. And of course, we're live on Conscious Resistance, Facebook, YouTube, etc., other places. And Float. If anybody. Media and Facebook. Float is pretty cool. You can check it out.
I think some YouTube refugees have been going there because I've been hearing it occasionally on YouTube. And they're like, sign up to my backup channels, my Float, my this, that, and the other. For sure, you got to
have the backups these days.
You definitely have to have backups. All right, what do you guys want to play? I'm gonna just
good music.
We're gonna play Crazy music just to start us off in a very chill mood because he always has good songs playing. And we'll be right back. And what else? What are we going to get into when we get back, though? Defunding the police. We still got to talk about the fluoride trial going on.
You got to talk about that.
I'm very interested in the fluoride trial.
And we haven't even gotten into Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. Exposed Bill Gates Day is this weekend. So even if you're listening to this on KPFT on Friday afternoon, you still have time to come out to Houston. I don't know where it's going to be yet, but by the end of the show, I'll tell you. I'll come up with something, and we'll decide where it's going to be. But yes, we'll get into all that in just a moment.
And if you are listening at KPFT, got to remember, KPFT's been doing this for over 4 decades. It's one of the few places where you can actually have free exchange of ideas. So, you know, if you're looking to something to get behind in these troubling times, maybe look for a way to get involved or contribute to KPFT. You can find out more at kpft.org.
Absolutely. KPFT.org. This is Freethinker Radio, and we will be right back. Please stay tuned.
Just go, go, just go, go, just go. You should know I should forget you. Just go. I should forget you. Just go, go, just go, just go, go, take back my life.
All right. Welcome back to Free Thinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. This is Derrick with Micah and Johnny, and we're continuing our conversation about defunding the police. Micah, what's happening nationally around the country? I see this Guardian article that says, "What does defund the police mean? The rallying cry sweeps the U.S. Explained." So let's get the Guardian's take on it. Is that where you were headed with this?
Yeah, I think that, just like when we're talking about when COVID and the stay home and pandemic and all that first started, you see these rallying cries, right? And, I think a lot of times they don't always mean what people think they mean. Kind of like the Patriot Act, wasn't really patriotic, right? So it's kind of like that. So I thought maybe it's something worth digging into more. So I started looking up the phrase defund the police to discover more because, I think it sounds great on the surface, right? Like defund the police. Let's not give them the money. Starve the beast. Yeah. Power to the people. But, then I started wondering, are they going to cut back these laws or how are they going to do this? How are they going to defund the police, et cetera? So let's get into a little bit of what the Guardian has to say about it. And they say, that overall, activists have long fought to cut law enforcement budgets. And they say they are seeing an unprecedented wave of support for these ideas, with some elected officials for the first time proposing budget reductions, which that sounds interesting, and divestments from police. And here's what they say they found out as they dug deeper. For years, community groups advocated for defunding law enforcement, taking money away from police and prisons for reinvesting those funds in services. The basic principle is that government budgets and public safety spending should prioritize housing, employment, community, health, education, and other vital programs instead of police officers. Advocates argue that defunding is the since attempts to reform police practices over the last 5 years have failed, as evidenced in the brutal killing of George Floyd and countless others, I would add. Groups have a range of demands, with some seeking modest reductions and others viewing full defunding as a step toward abolishing contemporary police services. So how much does America currently spend on police? In the past 4 decades, the cost of policing in the U.S. has tripled. and is now $115 billion, according to recent analysis. That steady increase comes as crime has been consistently declining. What? We're paying more for police even though crime is declining? In most cities, spending on police is significantly greater than spending on services and other departments. $1.8 billion on police in LA. Yeah, they got us beat there. For example,
crazy, man.
That's double.
yeah. It's more than half the city's general fund. The COVID-19 economic crisis has led cities and states to make drastic cuts to education, youth programs, art, culture, parks, libraries, housing services, and more. But police budgets have grown or gone largely untouched until pressures from protests this week. So how are lawmakers addressing these calls to defund? Because, I guess that's ultimately who will make the decision unless it's forced on us by, catastrophic events or world change, right? Almost overnight and in direct response to protests, some mayors and other elected leaders have reversed their positions on police funding. Doesn't sound like Sylvester Turner has, though. The mayor of LA said he would look to cut as much as $150 million from the police. And if you think, we just said they had $180 billion budget. So 100, what was that? 1.8. So that's what, 10%, less than 10% he's talking about cutting. Just 2 days after he pushed forward a city budget that was increasing it by 7%. So, that's a 3% cut maybe. A New York councilman has called for $1 billion divestment from New York Police Department. In Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, and other cities, local policymakers have expressed support for some form of defunding or opposing police budget increases. Most radically, in Minneapolis, council members have discussed potentially disbanding the embattled police department altogether. Colleges, public school systems, museums, and other institutions are also divesting from police. How do proposed cuts align with activist demands? The change in direction is monumental, but the size of the proposed cuts is not, activists have said. In LA, Black Lives Matter has been pushing for a people's budget that allocates just 5.7% of the general fund to law enforcement instead of the 51% of the mayor's plan. I mean, think about that. Over half the budget goes to law enforcement.
So that next section, I think, really addresses what a lot of people who I mentioned earlier are kind of scared of this, whether that's people who think that it's being pushed for one, covert reason or another, or people who are just like, here, defund the police and think, oh my God, violence everywhere. This next section says, if cities defund police, will violence and crime increase? So what are we seeing there?
Here they argue that abolition groups state that policing and prisons are at their core racist and harmful and make communities less safe. They also point out that the vast majority of police work has nothing to do with responding to or preventing violence, and that police have a terrible track record of solving murders or handling rape and domestic violence. Think of the Houston Crime Lab. While there is no contemporary example of defunding in the U.S., there are studies suggesting that less policing could mean less crime. In 2014 and 2015, New York officers staged a slowdown to protest the mayor, arguing that if they did less police work, the city would be less safe. But the opposite turned out to be true. When the officers took a break from broken windows policing, meaning targeting low-level offenses, there was a drop in crime. Researchers posited that aggressive policing on the streets for petty matters can ultimately cause social disruption and lead to more crime. Policing that punishes poverty, such as hefty traffic tickets, and we've seen that a lot right here in Houston. And yeah, so I think that's something to think about. And then we've got, y'all were talking about the police officers union, and I think this point's important too, because you're talking about maybe some of the resistance to even the phrase defund.
There's a lot of people thinking about it right now.
Yeah, so let's see what the police unions say, and maybe then just talk about this a moment. America's powerful police unions have long resisted even minor reforms and accountability measures. Huh? Why would they do that? And predictably arguing without evidence that budget cuts at any scale will make cities unsafe. They've cited looting and property damage amid protests this week to suggest that cities don't have enough officers. Defunding advocates, however, have pointed out that the highly militarized response to peaceful demonstrations and the aggressive and at times violent ways officers are handling protesters has only provided further evidence that police cause harm when there is no public safety threat in the first place.
Well, they're saying that the protests are, again, I hope that people listening to our show are smart enough to distinguish between protests and riots and understand that, we do distinguish between those, whether you agree with them or not, there is a difference. But they're saying that because of those protests and whatever, they need more police. But there's so many videos around the internet floating around of people filming and live streaming, showing the cops standing down and letting people throw rocks and throw bricks. And of course, eventually, once things get out of hand, they respond. But there's plenty of examples of weird things that have happened throughout this, whether the cops are standing down. I mean, there was even Mother Jones reported the other day, they have a video. They ended up getting a video showing this police force, I think it was in Minneapolis, slashing people's tires. That they claimed they were doing it preemptively in case people tried to use their cars as weapons. And so they just went around slashing a bunch of people's tires. And my point is, this kind of stuff is going on, and I think that the cops
So when they
always
stand down,
argue for
there's
more
less
money.
crime because they can't slice people's tires, and it's a crime to slice people's tires.
Oh
right?
my.
Well, and cops, I think that, and
Slicing people's tires.
I learned this whenever I did the whole mayor experiment, that definitely people locally do not want to call for taking money from the cops in any way. There's some sort of, I think it's an ideological battle too. They feel like if they allow the other side to win a victory of taking money away from the cops, that it's, it's like, I think it's just part of this left-right thing again. It's falling to that. Unfortunately, instead of people from both sides recognizing that police militarization is a problem, police violence is a problem, that, these kinds of, and obviously racism and the way that affects people's lives is a problem. Looking at the study that they talked about in New York, it's from Nature, Human Behavior, and it's called Evidence That Curtailing Proactive Policing Can Reduce Major Crime. And this was published in September 2017. And then, I don't know if you've seen or heard this, Micah, but one of the places that people have been referencing regarding all of this is Camden, New Jersey. Have you heard about this place recently? It's a city in New Jersey, obviously, that basically eliminated their whole police force 7 years ago, I think. And so people have been calling them as an example. I haven't looked too deep into it, so the mainstream is talking about this, which makes me question it. But I searched this, and you got all kinds of reports. What happened after Camden disbanded its police department? Cities like, and then the Federalist says cities like Camden show the dangers of defunding the police. Then so you got both sides, and people are reporting on this a lot in the last couple of days. But I pulled up one that was interesting, and it actually coming from Fox News, talking about the House Majority Whip James Clyburn, a Democrat from South Carolina, saying that he doesn't want to see police defunded, but he says that cities that have systemic issues with police departments could follow the examples of Camden, New Jersey. He said, quote, Camden had a police department that was rotten to the core. They didn't defund policing. They defunded the department. The policing was taken over by the county, and the policing was also contracted by private entities. And I know that freaks some people out to think of private policing, but I think there are benefits. So the policing kept going, and it was funded. They just got rid of a rotten department. That's what we need to do when it comes to law enforcement. So interesting, that's coming from a Democrat, but just to show people that these ideas are being discussed. And I did find another one from the Inquirer that says Camden disbanded its police department and built a new one. Can others learn from it? And it's basically saying they didn't necessarily defund it, but they did take it away, as he said, from the city. You had county stepping in, and some other, like I was mentioning earlier, there's an organization called Detroit Threat Management based in Detroit. We've talked before about Detroit's notorious hour-long policing times, and I think they've gotten that down over the years, but in the past it's been very bad after a lot of people left Detroit and just the North in general, and lots of crime in different places. And so the cops are notorious for being slow, and people knowing that they can't rely on the cops. So Dale Brown, who I've interviewed a couple times on this channel, he started Detroit Threat Management, and it's him and a number of other people who he trained, and they have a headquarters where you can go there and learn de-escalation training and self-defense and stuff like that. He also has private contracting with, different corporations or maybe private neighborhoods, but also he does free protection for like victims of domestic violence and, people in just situations like that. And they offer training to try to encourage police officers to use de-escalation tactics. And so when people get worried about this idea of defunding the police, I think we need to understand that doesn't mean there won't be community protection of some form in some other way. And it should look different maybe in different communities. Maybe some won't disband or defund the police, but maybe some places are truly rotten to the core and they need to be abolished. I mean, and new things started over. So yeah, I just wanted to mention Camden, New Jersey, for anybody who hasn't heard that, check it out. And again, there are different opinions. The Federalist claims it's that there's dangers involved in that. Others are saying it's
Joe
a good
Biden
idea,
doesn't want to defund the police.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
they might
it
get
must
into
be a
that.
bad idea, right? I mean, Joe Biden, it's interesting. And I think this ties into that whole idea of where they want the police there to be able to enforce their laws, right? So, of course, Joe Biden, and I'm sure Trump. So, you got your choice here, right? You can vote Trump or you can vote Biden, but either one of them doesn't really favor defunding the police. That's kind of interesting, right? But yet he supports urgent need for reform. And I talked about reform earlier, and how you're just keeping the institution there with reform.
Well, he said he wants to invest more money in policing.
$300 million more to community policing efforts. And so, I mean, just keep that in mind if you think that either one of these parties really wants to defund the police. It sounds like at least their upper echelon doesn't. And I saw something from Mint Press. I'm not going to go into it now, but the Democrats recently voted to give Trump even more police power. So it sounds like some of them, they don't care who they give more police power to.
What was that under? I got it pulled up on
USA Freedom Act.
Oh, just basically reauthorizing it.
Yes.
Which updated and amended version of the 2001 Patriot Act. They call it, of course, the Patriot Act, the Freedom Act. And continuing to infringe upon civil liberties, including the indefinite detention of immigrants and American citizens under the National Defense Authorization Act, which President Obama put into place. So you got Trump and Obama and Bush's and them carrying on the same things, police power, and even whether this is this picture here that we're showing on screen is from just last week, which was a pretty crazy display where Trump made the announcement about, saying that they want to send the military out. And the fact that I shared the numbers earlier that from the government themselves saying they have 43,000 National Guard troops scattered around the country right now, either because of COVID or because of the riots and protests. So we're slowly seeing the police state coming to the streets for whatever reason they say. Trump here in this, he decided he wants to, be a badass and walk from giving one press conference to go hold a Bible in another area, and the police stayed on full display. And in the background, you hear protesters. It was just something out of a scene. Obviously, I dislike Trump as much as any of the other parties, but unfortunately, this feeds into some people's, I think, mistaken belief that Trump is the be-all, end-all of this whole thing, when he's just kind of continuing a game that's been going on between left and right for a long time. But yeah, so a huge display of police power though out there, and it's just crazy. What do you think about that though, Mike? Are these really historical times? Whether it's historical in the sense of there's a protest movement building that may be completely organic or less than organic, depending on your view, but calling out real issues and
goodness,
and then this sort of thing, like
look at all the stuff that's been going on. 2020 has been insane. It's been building for a while, right? We can go back beyond this century even to the building. But I feel like, they sometimes have done these studies where when things go, take that parabolic curve up, things seem to happen faster. And it's a difficult thing to explain because I don't fully grasp it, but it does seem like things are happening faster. More and more events, as more and more things unravel, as the social fabric is stressed to the max. People are out on the streets, not just because of police brutality. We've had police brutality. I'm sorry. I'm glad they're out there because for 10 years, we've been like, where? Come on, please come out. We've done numerous benefits for different policing organizations, filming police, things like that. But my point is there's so much pressure. I'm glad they're out there. But when you ask, do we live in interesting times? Look at this. We just had, if you look at any of the graphs, if you look at unemployment graph, you look at the money printing graph, if you look at any of this, it's straight up. Is it any wonder that people are out in the streets? I think it's more than just the George Floyd incident. I think it's pressure that's been cooking for some time. And maybe that's just an outlet. And, it's kind of difficult because people tend to simplify things, and they think it's one big movement. As earlier, you made a distinction between the looters and the protesters. And, we've definitely got the looters. We've got the COVID going on. So we've got looters up on top.
It's the summer of crime, right? minds as looters and rioters, but also the summer of crime.
Murderers.
Criminals are getting away with things. I mean, we're getting close down to the wire. I don't know if we want to go to more music now or just continue on all the way to the end, but I definitely want to talk about the fluoride trial that's happening this week. And I do have an unfortunate Jeffrey Epstein update that is not anything good.
That sounds like it's going to fill up the rest of the time.
I think
we go to a song? Or just keep going, just barrel through?
We should just keep going. We don't have enough time for music. This is horrible. No, we
can make time for music. We can always make time for music. But I'll just cover a little bit of the fluoride trial. There's only a few updates, and that's basically for those who are not aware. I think we mentioned this last week that there is what I would consider a historic trial going on right now in San Francisco between the U.S. government via the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and a coalition of groups, including Organic Consumers Association, Food and Water Watch, a bunch of other groups, and including Fluoride Action Network. And basically, these groups have been suing. They're suing because 4 years ago they filed a petition under the Toxic Substance Abuse Act, I think is something along those lines, Toxic Substance Act. And it was passed in 1970. And basically, citizens can petition the government to say, hey, we found this poison, this chemical that is causing harm, and it's at a measurable level. And so they filed this petition 4 years ago. The government's been rejecting it, yada, yada, back and forth for 4 years. Now, finally, the judge said, okay, you can have a trial. The trial is 2 weeks long. It's just started this week, Monday, so it went today, yesterday, and it'll be going on tomorrow. And then Friday, they're not having court on Thursdays. But basically, the Fluoride Action Network and the attorneys with them and these other groups are going against the Trump administration via the EPA and a couple of attorneys that they hired from some corporate law firm that does these things, apparently. And basically, they're trying to argue over whether or not fluoride is a neurotoxin, which is what they've been able to show recently. And honestly, these 2 days of hearings have been pretty epic, I would say, for somebody. Me personally, because as a researcher, this is something that I've focused on, and one of the first topics that I really started diving into and exploring, the idea that fluoride is not what we've been told, and that there actually is harm. And this is also something that maybe some of our listeners hearing this have dismissed as conspiracy theory over the years. But there are now so many studies that have piled up, more than 70, that have shown different health problems, including in recent years, international studies showing that it's a neurotoxin and can affect IQ as well as other parts of the body, particularly affecting the pregnant mothers and children. And so the Fluoride Action Network has 2 weeks to present their case. They've been presenting. So far, they had one of their experts was Howard Hu of University of Washington. Today, they had Dr. Philippe Grandjean of Harvard and the University of Southern Denmark. And tomorrow, they'll have their expert, Dr. Bruce Lamphere of Simon Fraser University in British Columbia. And it's been going on every day via Zoom, so people can watch if they want to, wherever you're at, and keep up with it in the courtroom. And basically, it's kind of cool because usually you have to be there, and then they don't usually allow reporting. But in this case, since it's the only way they can have it, they have to let the public view it. It's through Zoom. So I've been doing live tweeting all day and yesterday, and I'll just tell you guys a couple of things because there was some big, I would consider very big moments. So after Dr. Grandjean, who is arguing, is a witness for the Fluoride Action Network, presenting evidence for fluoride being a neurotoxin, he starts presenting his evidence. Then he gets cross-examined by the government's attorney, Deborah Carfora, and she was being pretty confrontational with him, and he kept correcting her and telling her, she would state, well, did you say this? And it was a lot of back and forth. And then at the end of her cross-examination of him, she asked the judge, Edward Chen, to strike his entire testimony, everything he had presented, all the studies he presented to, Fluoride Action Network, and all the cross-examination, and to just completely strike it from the record, which would make it, admissible in court, basically. And she said because he failed to use a systematic review and compliance with the risk evaluation. Basically, she's saying he didn't follow the rules, and it was kind of a tense moment, and the judge basically denied that motion and allowed his testimony, which I think was pretty compelling, to stand. And then it continued. And then at one point when Dr. Grandjean, again, who is from the University of Southern Denmark, as well as another university, he was questioned on the stand about a study that he was involved in with Harvard in 2012, which was one of the first studies to show that it was a neurotoxin and that it was damaging people's brains, lowering IQ and things of that sort. And she asked him if he had also signed an additional letter that was released after the study, which basically said, although we have found this, we still support fluoride basically and support the CDC's position. And so she brought that up and said, "Did you not sign the statement?" And he's straight up said, he said he was threatened by a Harvard professor, by one of his colleagues, and his work was threatened, and that he was basically coerced into putting his name. He wouldn't even admit to putting his name on it. Like, he was like, "Well, if my name is on there, I'm telling you what happened. They threatened me because they said that, we had to comply with what the CDC had." So that was testified today in a federal court in the United States today, that a researcher who has plenty of credentials and studied fluoride and has worked for the U.S. government in one capacity or another, that he was threatened to basically append a statement to his study trying to downplay the results of it. And that was a pretty big moment, I thought. And I found a link to the actual study and into the statement where his name is on there. And then basically they went back and forth for a little bit further. The government was trying to argue various things to poke holes in his arguments, and that's kind of what you should expect, I guess. And that was where it's at today. So when you guys are hearing this on KPFT on Friday, we will have had Wednesday, and the trial will also be happening again on Friday. But we'll see how it turns out. Basically, the judge, if he feels that the evidence that they're presenting is compelling enough, he will rule that, yes, fluoride violates the Toxic Substance Abuse Act, which means that it should be the law says regulated or banned, but they're going to be clearly pushing for just banning it, getting it out of the water, and clearly showing that it doesn't need to be in the water at all. And then there would probably still be a pretty lengthy legal process. But yeah, that's where that trial's at. I didn't mean to go that long with that whole thing, but I do think that is a big topic and a big story. I mean, Micah, you're one of the people that I know who's been aware of this topic as well for a long time, and aware of the controversy that surrounds it for some reason.
Well, I think it's interesting, you're talking about Bill Gates, and one of the concerns it seems that people have there related to that character is forced medication. And what is fluoridation of your municipal water supply other than forced medication? Because the reason they tell you they do it is for your own good, your teeth. They do it for your teeth. They tell you that's why they do it. So it's forced medication. Can you get water without it? Yeah, you can go buy water without it. But I don't know. I think it's kind of a bit much. I mean, I could maybe even buy it if we didn't have toothpaste and floss as readily available as we do now. And also we've looked at, the aspect of just bathing in this stuff, Well,
and they were bringing that up in the case about it's not just if you're drinking fluoridated water which a lot of us don't do, but some people do. It's the sodas that are filled with fluoridated water and all the processed foods. And it's also in canned meats that have been blended up, like tuna and stuff like that. Usually that's fluoridated water in there. You're absorbing it through your skin in the shower. I mean, it's so many different ways that we're taking it in. And it was interesting because I've heard this question often. The judge even asked, just because he was curious, does boiling the fluoridated water have any effect? And as we've talked about before, it doesn't have any effect. And Dr. Granjan basically said, no, if anything, you're kind of increasing because your amount of fluoride, because you're going to evaporate the water. And eventually, if you evaporate all the water, then the fluoride will go too. But, you're basically, the fluoride's still going to be there. And if you cook food with it, it absorbs the fluoride. So just all the things that I've been seeing and learning about researching, it was interesting to finally see them in a court of law where a judge who is going to rule on this is actually hearing this. And I'm optimistic, but I'm also skeptical. So if things don't pan out for one reason or another, I won't be really surprised. But if so, it could lead to class action lawsuits. It could lead to all kinds of things. I mean, if they really conclude in a court of law that because of neurotoxicity, that fluoride is damaged. Think about for the last 70 years, the amount of people have been drinking, eating, consuming fluoride.
Some of the people that started that might be dead now.
Yeah.
Well, think about suing the city of Houston because they continue to use your tax dollars to fluoridate the water after we've gone there and told them that there's
We went there and they had dentists ready to
they literally
hate us. Yeah, they hired three official
how
dentists.
That's how
from
little
the
they
American
care.
Dental Association.
Yeah, that's how little they care about whether they force medicate you or not. So, if one day it's just fluoride for your teeth, it makes a logical conclusion that it's just, here it's time to shoot you up with nanobots or whatever because of COVID or whatever, because of reasons. You've already conceded the argument by accepting it for your teeth.
Yeah, that's a good point that we already have it on the book. And we have talked about that before, that water fluoridation, if you want it, then you should be able to buy the toothpaste or go to the dentist that do that rather than everybody paying tax dollars if you're in a city where it's happening. In Houston, it's over $1 million, which doesn't amount to much per citizen. But the point is, it's what you're saying is that you don't have the freedom to say no to it. And then whether or not you ever drink the water when you shower, unless you put a filter, which is not everybody can afford, then you're absorbing it through your skin.
And it's also probably economically disproportionately consumed by poorer people as well, because think about all the bottled water we have nowadays. Maybe back in the 60s and 50s, there wasn't so much bottled water when they were fluoridating it. But now I think a lot of people are buying bottled water, like bulk of the water they ingest is bottled. So they're not even, that water is mostly just that's being fluoridated with $4 million a year. It's just going straight down the drain. A bulk of it's not even being consumed to make your teeth healthy. I did see a comment here, not even related to fluoride. I'd hate to let it go. So you're not going to mention the professional looters in D.C. with the stroke of a pen took trillions of dollars and divided amongst themselves and their friends. Oh, how could we not? Trillions of dollars for sure.
Trillions of dollars for the COVID recovery, for there's the CARES Act. Yeah, and this is the summer of crime, because
counterfeiting.
They're giving millions and millions of dollars to the CDC for health surveillance, all kinds of other things that were in the CARES Act. Plus, how many other bills have there been since then, with the Fed giving billions of dollars, trillions of dollars?
More on the way, not to mention the fact that perhaps now we're seeing that these bureaucratic things like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which we don't have time to get into, are just supporting the narrative. Because, here's a 6.4 million people discrepancy between employment and unemployment right there in the BLS. Maybe we got more time to get into it in the future, but if you go to...
Well, let's make that a bonus round for those who are watching, because I think we probably need to wrap up in just a moment for our KPFT show. But we're going to hang out like we do a little bit longer for those who are watching online. We're going to do a little bit more. Micah's got another story. I'll do another one.
I don't have any more.
But I need to mention, at least if you're listening on Friday afternoon on KPFT, for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about Bill Gates. Each of us have offered different perspectives.
We're talking about him. Johnny
started with Microsoft and different things. Micah was covering Prism and Microsoft being one of the first places to share your data with the NSA, the U.S. government. I've been talking about how he uses his philanthropy to hide money and avoid taxes and then make profits from funding vaccine companies, and how he has a web of influence. There's a number of different reasons that do not fall into the realm of conspiracy theory, and that are part of the reason why we are calling for Expose Bill Gates Global Day of Action this Saturday, June 13th. So even if you're hearing this on KPFT on Friday, there's still time. Where are we going to do it, Johnny, in Houston? Where can we do it? Micah, where can we gather and talk to people on a Saturday afternoon where people will be at? The park, Eleanor Tinsley Park?
Really anywhere where there's people.
Well, let's just say a meeting
park,
place.
so.
Yeah, like maybe we give a meeting place and then we can gather around. How about we'll meet at the skate park at Eleanor Tinsley Park?
Yeah.
Is that Eleanor Tinsley right there? The Jamal Skate Park, is that what it's called? Jamal something skate park?
There's lots of spots.
What, right in front of the Fed?
Or let's meet at the Federal Reserve. We could do that. That's on Allen Parkway. But we'll go ahead. If you guys are interested and you're hearing this on Friday, go to Freethinker Radio on Facebook, and we'll have an event there waiting for you to check out. We don't know right now, but
even if you don't know the location, just go
Kroger somewhere.
I see a comment. Who's selling them all that fluoride? Who's getting that check?
Mosaic.
Yeah, Mosaic Co. That's a company based in Florida. We have their information. So if you want to get involved with the Expose Bill Gates Day, all we're asking is to a couple things. Change your profile to this image we have here. I've actually added images to the link that we're going to put on Freethinker Radio. We have several flyers you can print out, and there's a documentary you can watch from the Corbett Report. There's articles. We have all that information. I'll include those links for those who want to learn more about that. That's Saturday if you want to get involved. And I know, Johnny, you got more actions that you want to plan coming up, so there's going to be lots of things to get into. You want to do something about the title soon, right?
Yeah, I haven't organized it yet, but it'd be really nice if we could get some comments from the mayor for the families. Just listening to their testimony is always really unfortunate for me. I just hate to hear someone have to go without their child's name being cleared.
There's just so much. It's just so brutal. It's that police state sort of authoritarian regime that we've all been brought up to not want, and it was right here in Houston. Thank goodness that some people did get out there for the vigil and the memorial and the march. We had people come on the radio to talk about it. Like you said, glad more people are being aware of police violence, because it seems to be inherent in the system. And I do think it's a real conflict between defunding the police and wanting all your social agenda laws, because how are you going to go collect? without a gun. So we'll see how far we really come defunding the police. Got to get outside that left-right dichotomy. Biden and Trump aren't going to do it.
Exactly. Get out of the left-right paradigm. Neither one of the parties are going to really care about you, and I would argue care about minorities, care about any of us. And it really is up to us to start exploring ideas like community policing, de-escalation, of course, and even like Detroit threat management, and eventually
being perpetually strapped.
Being willing to protect and defend ourselves, for sure, I think is a part of that. All right, guys, we're going to close with Motion Hotel, Friends with Friends. We'll be back in just a couple minutes if you're watching. This is Freethinker Radio, 90.1, KPFT Houston. Anything else, guys?
We love you. Here. Love you.
Don't tell them you love them if you don't love them.
I love you.
We're far too young to feel this soul. Cry on me, spend 50 more years chasing gold. Just disregard this birthday. And ponder now what makes these words not what they say. I, king of chemo manipulation, 'cause I feed upon your dark temptation, that I deliver without hesitation, back away and find a human being. We're far too young to feel this soul. By all means, spend 50 more years chasing gold. Just disregard this birthday. And ponder now what makes these words not what they seem. Far too young to feel this soul. By all means, spend 50 more years chasing gold. Just disregard this current thing. Ponder now what makes these words not what they seem.
Yeah. All right, we're back. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Freethinker Radio.
Comments. Those comments were
Micah, we got to get like this light out of the way behind you.
It's killing me, man.
I mean, you're like Batman.
I like it better.
You fucking set the light up.
I like it that way.
Well,
it helps hide.
No, hang
we
on,
need
Micah,
some more
you
light.
gotta come a
Look,
little
I
bit.
don't think during the
Maybe we
last
should
few
turn the
minutes
table.
Go to the right.
Why don't we turn the table
Go
so that
to
it's
the
like
light.
on both of
Go
us?
into the light.
Fuck it. We'll do it next
Trying
time.
to move everything all the time.
What's up, guys? So let me remind you again to please join Expose Bill Gates Day, and however you can. It's this weekend. I don't know if you saw. Oh shit! I don't know if you saw the video I put out earlier with James Corbett. James is actually going to be putting that on his channel tomorrow. We got Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who from the Children's Health Defense Fund, who's promoting it. Other people are getting involved. If you guys want to promote it, go out and put an event together. Whatever you want to do, just spread the word in some way, even if it's just social media slacktivism. Just do something, because it's Bill Gates, but it's also he's a part. He's connected to the Soros and the Rockefellers. Now that we can be real, we're not recording for the radio anymore. We can be a little more real. This guy is part of the freaking machine, and exposing him, I think, can go a long way right now because I even was my article on The Last American Vagabond was featured in a BBC article with Bill Gates saying I can't even respond to these stupid conspiracy theories, and there's a tweet of Ryan of Last American Vagabond tweeting out my Bill Gates investigation, and I don't know if he was responding directly to that, but it's just funny they linked that in there.
It'd be funny to catch him on the street, huh?
Dude, I don't think Bill Gates is ever going to be alone on the street after getting 3 pies to the face. Like, I have a feeling he's got, when he's in public, got some huge dudes surrounding him and, just protecting himself from pies in the face and from people who would ask him real questions. That's the other thing is because he donates millions and millions of dollars to the BBC and The Guardian and all these organizations, you hear them floating him as this hero. I mean, it's a direct result of his funds.
Stuff.
Yeah.
People say, get your pies out.
Get your pies out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So wherever you're at, we are going to do something in Houston. I know
You
that
can't dodge them all.
I've had people contact me just today from Germany. We've had India, Spain, a couple places in the U.S., a couple people in Canada. So it'll be scattered. It's not going to be the big as the movement you're seeing in the street right now, but it's going to definitely be some people doing things. And I think as far as this whole thing goes, James's documentary, the one that we've been kind of promoting with this, his first part of this documentary, which is amazing for those who haven't seen it. It's a 4-part documentary, CorbettReport.com/Gates, which he's encouraging people to burn and pass out or whatever. That first part of it has been seen just about 1 million times now on YouTube. And that's if you even trust YouTube's views. Maybe it's long been there or something, but sometimes some videos seem to crack through and they can't really seem to fully suppress them. Maybe it doesn't show up in the search engine, but it has that much of an organic reach that people are sharing it everywhere to their friends. And also a lot of people are researching who's Bill Gates right now because of all this stuff going on.
I got hit with the fact checkers when I was sharing it out. So
You don't have to believe the man is like some sort of evil murderer. Not that he's not. You don't have to believe he's not, one of these evil, diabolical New World Order guys or something. You don't have to believe that he's one of those guys to question him. And when you look at the history of Microsoft, I mean, there's some really kind of scary stuff and some landmark court cases where they were abusing employees more or less, treating temporaries, using temporaries for like 8 years, expecting them to do everything that the full employees were doing, only giving them less benefits. All kinds of ways where he was also making computer manufacturers come with, how we get our cell phones preloaded with a system and all these apps on them. That's how his Microsoft Office was. He was getting Windows to be preloaded on computers. People had a hard time once they bought their computer and it already had Windows going back. They even had situations where people had asked to have to pay it removed and such. So there was all kinds of, while he pretended that he cared about open freedom and exchange of software ideas and development, he's sitting there playing market manipulation and control. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that should make us just wonder a little bit about the man. You don't have to make some sort of big claim on him to go, wow, there's some interesting stuff here.
something else I wanted to bring up is like all these philanthropic people. Why are they always like funding like medical research and vaccines instead of like building permaculture gardens or something
Water. Or
like
something.
the oceans. Like you're telling me Bill Gates can't afford to clean the oceans, or he can't afford to save all the businesses in America,
Or just
he
giving
can't
us a big party.
afford to,
why don't they ever
throw
do that?
us the biggest rave we've ever seen?
I mean, really, these guys.
Well, I mean,
But
that's
he wants to act like he's doing all this good, and it's like there are so many ways that everyone says that if I had the money I would do it this way, but like you really think about it, like he doesn't invest in systems that would end up being self-sustaining for the people that he's helping. They come back to him.
Well, it's ways for them to profit and make billions. I mean,
That's what I'm
that's
saying.
one of the studies I found in my investigation of Bill Gates showed that since they've started donating and investing in vaccines, that the vaccine prices in some countries have actually gone up, and like not just a little bit, but like 100% profits and things of that
And
sort.
that was another thing that I found as well, was that that the foundation would invest in things that were contrary to the foundation's stated purpose to make money at times.
Yeah, I mean there's just so many obvious conflicts of interest. So I feel like even if people don't look into the deeper stuff, which for me and part 3 of my investigation, and James in part 4 of his documentary gets into the whole eugenics and talking about Event 201 and the Rockefeller connection, those things. Even if you're not ready or willing to believe those things, there are verifiable facts, even in the mainstream press, that they've talked about that should cause people to question the true nature of Bill Gates. So I'm going to let that one go now and just again remind you guys, please expose Bill Gates Day this Saturday, wherever you're at. Go to the website. I put up some flyers on there you can download.
Just tell one person. Tell your mom.
Just talk to your mom, please. She needs to hear
Mom,
you
we need
anyways.
to talk about Mr. Gates.
Mom, it's time to talk about Bill Gates. No, but honestly, dude, and I've been saying this on another video, that for the last 2 weeks since I was putting out that investigation and been promoting this, and could totally be unrelated, I have been getting trolled more than ever. Trolled more than ever on like people sending me messages on my phone, people who I don't know, just texting me, telling me this or that, people messaging me on Facebook, email, just angry things, and trolling on Twitter, and specifically like going hard to defend Bill Gates. Like it's been weird. It's like even if they don't, okay, you guys are crazy conspiracy theorists, but to the level that people are seeming willing to defend him, and it could be NSA bots, it could be just bored people trying to literally troll. I don't know what exactly, but I haven't felt this much heat in a while, I'll say. Somebody says, my family has finally woke up to this stuff, and it's amazingly refreshing. We'd love to hear more about that, man. We need to figure out this whole phone call, how we can do the phone calls through here. But
I missed the phone calls.
You want to go to this unemployment thing?
I think the main, I do just for a moment. I sent a couple in that chat
I'll pull
as
them
well.
up.
But I think the main thing I wanted to get into with this is something that we keep talking about, that yes, COVID's real. Yes, the protests and the riots are real. But at the same time, there's other things going on that these are conveniently providing cover for. And that's the larger economic problem. And how is that larger than people dying? Well, everybody's affected. We're all in this economy together. The money you earn, you expect it to still be able to buy something the next day, right? So when they print money and it gets devalued and your grandmother's savings is worth less, maybe, if everybody's concerned about grandma surviving COVID, we ought to be so concerned about her life savings surviving to be able to serve her now that she can't work as much as she used to. But the main thing I wanted to get into, and, I thank that commentator for saying about the looters with the pen that took the trillions, because the Federal Reserve is still at it. We saw the cracks in the foundation in September of last year. I wouldn't be surprised if it was September 11th. I think it was probably more like September 13th when the overnight rate went to 10%. But we've seen the stimulus package go. We've seen the lockdown of the economy, more or less, where Main Street's told you can't open your business. I mean, wow, what happened to this country, right? So we've seen the largest spike in unemployment, right? Meanwhile, there's some people that are saying, oh, it's worth more to be on unemployment. But the problem that want to get into, I just wanted to kind of put it in the whole realm of economic looting that's going on, is just last week, I think maybe you have heard it going by in the chatter and the feed about how there's such a recovery, a jobs recovery, the jobs we're coming back, but it turns out that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors there. And what I'm kind of concerned about is if we have smoke and mirrors from places like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we can no longer know what's real. And that's a concerning aspect of government. I got this one from thestreet.com. I don't know if you will put that one up there, Derrick. And it says there's a 6.4 million discrepancy between the change in employment level and the change in unemployment level. There's a new all-time record discrepancy between employment and unemployment in the household survey that measures the so in addition to that, I mean,
this is an official government.
There's a 6.4
Bureau of Labor
million
Statistics government report, right?
Yeah, and this guy, he goes through and he spells out some different things, but I wanted to get a little bit further. There's an older article here from Seeking Alpha and talking about birth-death adjustments. And what this is in brief, it imagines, hypothesizes how many jobs are created by companies that are too new and or too small to be found by the current employment statistics program. The model attempts to create what is perceived as a BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, error at the start of the recovery, with many new jobs being created but missed by BLS. But in fixing one problem, they created another. At the end of the cycle, where we are today, the BD, birth and death of businesses, adjustment potentially will hypothesize lots of phantom job creation. That explains the stability in construction and finance jobs in monthly data. And that is actually an article from 13 years ago. I bring that up because, as you can see, there's this other one. I hope that you got it there from BLS.gov. Changes to the net birth death model due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we don't have enough time to get into all of it, but I'm hoping that these few resources, the people that want to go down this rabbit hole a bit more, will have time to. So that right there from the Bureau of Labor Statistics.gov web, where they've got the changes to the net birth death model due to COVID pandemic. Those things that are indented there, a portion of the both reported zeros and returns from zero in the current month from the sample were used in estimation to better account for the fact that business births and deaths will not offset. And current sample growth rates were included in the net birth death forecasting model to better account for the changing relationships between business opening and closing. Current sample growth rates.
So what is it? What the hell does that mean?
Exactly. It's exactly. What does this mean? Firstly, the Bureau of Labor Statistics included a proportion of reports that fell to zero employment and reports that returned from zero employment in the current month in the over-the-month change of the sample-based estimates. In other words, anything that fell to zero employment and anything that returned from zero. So if it let one go and hired one back, they were both counted in the month. Typically, reports with zero employment in either the previous or current month are not even included. So they're including those just because of COVID. So my point here is things are being changed in how they report these to account for
how they report what? Deaths and births?
Of businesses, which is something by which they come up with the number of people.
So this is another way to play with the numbers of how many
Yes.
businesses are actually shutting down and closing.
Exactly. Yes.
Interesting.
So
and
they're
how
saying
many
more
employees
businesses
are working at their business.
Exactly.
Like, that's
and
what
if
they're
you look at
counting.
exactly, if you look at the table, it'll show you the May forecast in different industries with the adjustment and without. So if you look at total private, and these are in the thousands, or is it the millions? I'm not sure, but 138
Hopefully
difference.
it's not the millions.
All of these,
Thousands.
as you can see, most of them are larger with the adjustment.
So with the adjustment, the change they did, it appears that there's more jobs. In
Exactly.
almost every single one of these cases than there really is.
Yes, and if you read, there's another part of this where it talks about that they also use a time
By
model
quite a bit.
to a time
But-
model that's bigger than the range in which they're reporting for. So they add a few days.
So is what it's saying though with adjustments is this? It's because it says net birth deaths. So this is saying like the net number of businesses that have come and gone or that have come back.
Come and gone.
Yeah.
So with the adjustment, they're actually inflating the numbers of jobs that have been lost or
Yes.
businesses that have been lost.
Yes.
Interesting. That's weird.
It's a complex thing, and I think
Yeah, that's
it's
some
something.
interesting shit, though.
It's a little bit more, involved. And, I tried to get into it a little bit deeper because there were a number of articles coming out arguing that it was not fraudulent. And I was like, why are they coming out saying that the BLS statistics aren't fraudulent? Because I hadn't seen a whole lot saying it was. And as I dug a little bit more, I started to see some of the reasons that people say that fraudulent is it's changed just for the number of opening and closing due to COVID. It's changed also to include a different than normal time frame, which also would skew the numbers somewhat. And then we talk about how
the books.
They also don't count the people that have been unemployed for X amount of time, et cetera. So it's all part of a narrative. The recovery. It's been going on, right?
Well, one other story I want to cover briefly just before we wrap up. I don't know if you guys saw this. The headline yesterday that now the World Health Organization officials saying that asymptomatic spread of coronavirus is extremely rare, and that instead of worrying about people who might get it, authorities should focus on people who are, as some have said for a while, should focus on detecting and isolating infected people who actually have symptoms. Not that I support the government isolating people or tracking and tracing them either way. But they're saying focus on people who have symptoms rather than locking everybody down, forcing everybody to wear a mask and go through all this stuff. And
What, Derrick? That's crazy.
But yeah, well, those who want to listen to the World Health Organization, they're now saying that it is extremely, very rare. And someone might say, well, hey, you guys have criticized the World Health Organization before. Now you want to listen to them now when they say something that you think is right. That's not really the case. I think what's happening here is that the World Health Organization has been giving mixed messages the entire time and saying one thing, from telling people that there was nothing to worry about, that the masks don't do anything, then you need to have a mask, and all this back and forth, while other experts in their field, maybe even independent outside of the U.S. government, and some working with governments in other parts of the world, have called for not locking people down, saying that masks don't do that great, and that people are breathing in their own carbon dioxide, that the mask collects spit and can get infection and bacteria in there.
This is basically.
So there's other people have been saying this.
This is the
I think you breathe
justification
out.
for the mask, though. This is the only justification for the mask if you have no symptoms.
Essentially, is basically
Sure.
like you could be asymptomatic. So I had people who were shaming me and telling me, and I wasn't trying to be critical of anybody else. I was just saying, hey, when I come back to Houston, I'm going to continue to do what I did in Mexico, which is only support businesses that don't require me to wear a mask. And that's what I've done. And some people got triggered by it and were like, because I said something about, if you're afraid and you want to wear a mask, and they said, I'm not afraid, actually. I'm doing it because I'm compassionate, because I'm not sick, but somebody else could potentially get sick. I could be, because I may be
So now it turns
asymptomatic.
out
But that turns out that not necessarily the
I'm a
case.
human
our test
disease.
came back.
But at the same time, so this was yesterday, right?
That
Then
was a
just
lie.
today, the World Health Organization starts trying to backpedal already and say like, whoa, hold on, that doesn't necessarily mean, that you should all go about your lives and live things. I don't know. It's just that's where we're at now. And I wanted to kind of rub that in some people's face yesterday. And I did that. And there was just another one to add to that. There was a Norwegian study. I already covered this on the YouTube channel, a Norwegian study that came out, 2 of them actually, that claimed, like others have previously, that the virus seems to have been engineered in a lab, and that the spike proteins on it seem to have been fitted, have been adapted for humans. But this study was originally published on Forbes.com. Within minutes, an editor's note gets added to it. Then they change the title, and then they just take it down. And then I think they might have actually put it up later, but they've totally changed. You can find the screenshot of the original version. I found a few websites talking about it. And they basically were trying to say it's the study hasn't been retracted, but they're just trying to say it's not a credible study. This and
What's
that.
really crazy is
I don't know.
Similar things happened to me regarding COVID with the death percentage numbers and the percentage of infection in general. When I was trying to point to that Stanford study at one point, and I was getting jumped on all over on the internet, and then. I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, I read a study by CBS or some mainstream news, maybe ABC. And they basically had the same exact numbers. That, death rate somewhere around 2%, and there's about 12% infection. So, like, more infections, lower death rates. And I don't know. I just think it's crazy how no one's just recognizing
People have
blatantly how
shortened-
we're saying, oh, well, we were wrong again. Okay, we were wrong again.
So let me show you guys this who are watching. Look at this. So oh wow, even this is crazy. Look, so I go to Forbes, And they put it, now it's back up, but they retitled it "Controversial Coronavirus Lab Origin Claims Dismissed by Experts." Originally, obviously, it said study finds this and that. And then it says, June 8th, this article has been substantially updated to reflect criticism of the published study, along with the general scientific consensus on COVID-19. Again, that scientific consensus we hear a lot about. It also clarifies, now this is one thing that I do think was,
Is there a scientific consensus board?
Well, no, but they say that about climate change and,
Oh, we've asked them all.
But it gets to the point, like with the climate change debate, where they say there is no debate. The other side is totally wrong. So according to mainstream journalism, objectivity doesn't mean that you have to give the quote, climate change deniers or the anti-vaxxers or the people who question COVID any time of day, because that's not objectivity. If you know they're wrong because the consensus is they're wrong, then you don't have to share that there's another opposing opinion.
But that's not the same as knowing they're wrong because you can prove
it's
the
just
actual science.
Exactly. And so, but it's interesting.
It's kind of like the bad police. It's giving science a bad name because it's not actually doing science.
No, it's biased. But they did point out, I pointed this out in my video too, that there is a legitimate claim to say that one of the researchers behind it, and it's a weird study, right? Basically, what they said is based on their research, they found that the spike protein looks like it's engineered. It has various traits that it's been messed with and adapted for human, infection and spreading. And then they said, because we know that, we're the only ones that are treating it in the right way. And he also happens to own stock in a vaccine company that claims that they can treat this, that they have recognized that it's engineered and
So
they know how
they're
to treat it.
starting from the right place, yeah.
So, but yeah, so the argument is that, hey, everybody else is going to get it wrong because they don't understand that this is bioengineered. We know it's bioengineered, so we've developed a vaccine. So there is some controversy that he did a study and also was with the company, but that doesn't mean the study is necessarily false itself. And there was 2 studies actually that are involved. But my point is, I'm showing everybody on screen. It was originally reported on G-Wire, which is just a press release website where people put out press releases. And it is now, here's the original title. You can see at the top, Norway scientist claims report proves coronavirus was lab made, but it's gone. You can't even see the press release about it anymore. You can see the Forbes now, but it's been completely changed. And it says it's got 2 million views. And now those 2 million views have basically got an article that's been altered and changed and tried to debunk. See, there's another report. No, COVID-19 coronavirus was not bioengineered. Here's the research that debunks the idea. Like, they're trying real hard to get people not to look at the Wuhan Virology Institute, the fact that Bill Gates funded the NIH.
To put that right at the very end is the first option of the next article.
They just want to make sure if you get the point, there's no engineering.
At the
There's
end
no
of it, it's
engineering.
like, this is bullshit.
It is. It came from a wet market. It came from bats. There's no reason to question that. Don't worry about the U.S. government partially funding the Wuhan Virology Institute studying coronaviruses with bats. Nothing to do with this. Totally random.
Nothing about Fort Detrick.
Don't worry about Fort Detrick or Event 201 or any of those stuff. Anything else, guys, you want to add?
Oh, I'm just looking through the comments.
Oh, what do you want to throw on there? Anything good? Great points. Got to get to making dinner. Yeah, dinner sounds so good, man.
Yeah.
We're going to do dinner, too.
The places that had a lot of deaths in the U.S. is where it was turned on. I don't think – is this the 5G thing again? Yeah. You guys are still on that. So COVID-19 could have been a smoke screen. No, it's definitely not 5G, guys. Never locked down. Bill Gates, WHO, and Fauci are not the law. The only thing is the executive orders from the puppets in charge of the state. Yep, they're all puppets. Mainstream news is CIA anyway.
Yeah.
Partially true, yeah.
It's also Bill Gates.
Operation Mockingbird.
Is there a link to the backtracking headline? I think I just shared the link. If not, I will share that right now. Any other ones you see, Micah, that are good?
Oh, we got into some earlier you posted, but I was just reading through them. Giving them one last chance, anything they want to throw up there type thing too.
Yeah, we're about to sign off, guys. We appreciate you listening. This has been another episode of Freethinker Radio. Any last thoughts you want to share with us, comments, please go ahead and let us know, or forever hold on to yourself.
Until next week.
Until next week. I just put that link for those who want to see that Forbes article.
People questioning the actual population in the U.S., I think that's probably a good thing. Like, what is the actual population? You know, they say it's around, 420 million, something like that. I don't know, but good questions.
It's a lot of people.
Because then these stats, about how many people are sick, how many people are dying, etc.
All right, guys. Well, appreciate everything. Thanks for listening. This has been Freethinker Radio. Till next time, Peace.
327